We are in part 2 of a 4-week series, and we're calling it Make It Rain. So sometimes people will go to a club and they'll make it rain. So usually somebody who's like a rap star or an athlete, someone who's got lots of money, they want to go and show off how much money they have. They just go and they throw it around and just make it rain. And I said last week, I don't think that's fiscally responsible. I don't think that's a good idea, but I would love to be able to do it. I would love to be in a financial position to make it rain. Like, I'd love to walk into McDonald's and just pull an Oprah. You know, like, you get a burger, and you get a burger, and you get a burger. Happy meals for everybody. I'd love to just walk into Walmart and say, hey, everything's on me, guys. Well, that would be pretty expensive, I suppose. But, you know, I would love to be in a position to be able to do that. So I would love to be able to make it rain. And there's more to the idea of this, which we're going to talk more about next week, more of a spiritual sense of making it rain. But really, this week, we are going to talk about something different. And I said last week, I'll say it again every week, I'm basing the series on one I picked up off of Life.Church. Life.Church is a mega church in the States, and they're amazing in that they're just really generous with their stuff. And so they say, hey, you know, if we've done something you like, feel free to use it. Just make sure you give us credit. So I'm giving them credit. We're going to talk about making it rain, but really what we're talking about is how do we manage our resources in a way that will honor God and change our lives? How do we manage our resources in a way that will honor God and change our lives? And so last week we did this. We'll do it again this week. There are 4 big themes that's going to be in this series. Do you guys remember what last week was? Less is more. It's on the screen. I know you saw. Less is more. This week we're going to look at the idea that stress is bad. Following week, giving is good, and tomorrow matters. And I said last week, I hate when pastors do this, but I'm going to do it to you guys too. Let's repeat after me, or say it with me. Less is more, stress is bad, giving is good, tomorrow matters. One more time. Less is more, stress is bad, giving is good, tomorrow matters. Good. By the time we're done this series, you guys are going to know that off the top of your head, and you'll be able to share it with others, hopefully. So the first question we need to ask is stress really bad? You know, I've heard different theories on this, that there are types of stress which are good. I suppose if you're working out, you need to have a certain amount of stress, right? Or else you're not actually getting those sweet, sweet gains that you want to get. But there's a type of stress that helps people to perform better. You know, like, you've ever heard I rise to a challenge, that idea. You know, when the stress hits me, that's when I really do what I'm supposed to do. And so, yeah, there may be some types of stress that are good, but we're talking about financial stress. And I think we can all agree that no matter what, financial stress is always a bad thing. You never want to have financial stress. I said last week, you've never heard anybody say anything like, you know, this debt that I've incurred is really helping my marriage. You know, this minimum monthly payment that I have is really good for my sex life. You know, no one ever says that. You know, high interest rates equals hot sex life doesn't really equate. No one goes to bed every night saying, you know, God, I just want to thank you for my debt. But everyone says that they would love to help or give more, right? Everyone would say, if I could, I would want to be able to give more. I just can't afford to. Everyone says, I wish we could travel. You know, for some of us, that might mean that one of us stays home to watch the kids, the other one goes and has a great time. Everyone says, if they're in this position, that they are tired of financial issues and fighting. Nobody wants to be in that position. So no matter what, we can agree that financial stress is a bad thing. Maybe you're in that situation right now. And if you are, I can say I know what you're going through. I've been in that situation in the past. There's something I call debit card roulette. This is where you go up to the thing with your groceries on the line and you put it in and you hope, yeah, jackpot, it worked. You know, there was a time I went into Walmart and it didn't work. And the lady behind the counter, she's just like, it happens all the time. And I didn't know what she meant. I figured she's probably trying to reassure me, make me feel better. Oh yeah, that happens, don't feel bad. Happens to a lot of guys, you know, a lot of people. But I also thought maybe she's saying, oh, that happens all the time with this machine. Because I didn't expect that to happen. I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm out of money. So I wasn't sure. I'm saying, you know, am I broke or is the machine broke? Like, be clear with me. Just be straight. But it's an awful feeling when you go in there and you just pull it out and you're like, oh, I don't have the money that I thought I had. Finances, it's a tough topic. It's a tough topic because a lot of us, we don't know a lot about it. You know, we've all made mistakes in this area. A lot of times we feel overwhelmed. As soon as you mention finances, you tighten up and you feel like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. We'd rather do like what this ostrich is doing, just put our head in the sand because we feel helpless and hopeless. And so it's just easier not to talk about it. And yet we need to talk about it. We're this morning going to look at what God can teach us about our finances. And we've got a number of different verses we're going to look at. First one is Proverbs 22, verse 7. This was written by Solomon, Proverbs, wisest man who ever lived, and he told us, he wrote a lot about money. And so verse 7, he says, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. How do the rich rule over the poor? Well, if you're poor, you're just not concerned about anything other than a few certain things. You want to make sure you've got food. You want to make sure you've got shelter, clothing. If you're rich, you can really think about other things. You can think about, hey, maybe I'll run for office. I will get into a position where I literally am in a position where I rule over people, especially in that day and age. But the idea that the borrower is slave to the lender, that's hard, isn't it? He's talking about bondage here. Talk about stress is bad. You do not want to be in a situation where you are a slave to somebody. In his day and age, it was literally a slave, but the idea of slavery in that time is a lot more like those of us who work at a job that we don't like. I'm not saying me, I'm just saying, people who work at a job they don't like, that is basically a slave who has to do what they have, they're doing what they have to do because they owe money. And so they are a slave to the person who's lent them money. If the bank tells you got to do something, you do it because you don't want to be out on the street. The borrower is slave to the lender, and that comes with all kinds of stress. So what I want for us this morning, what I want to do myself, and what I want you to do is to commit to do something about this. If this is an issue for you because you've made mistakes in the past, make a commitment not to make those mistakes. If this is an issue where you just don't know, make a commitment to get to know something. But I want you to imagine what it would be like to be free of financial stress. Wouldn't that be good? Just to be in a situation where if something breaks, you're not worried about it. You just pay to fix it. Be like, yeah, no problem. I got that. If you want to buy something, that you pay cash. Wouldn't that be like the ultimate baller move? You just walk up into a car dealership. Boom, I want the red one. Just paying cash. It would blow the guy's mind, I imagine. Doesn't happen often, I would think. Imagine what it'd be like to see someone in need and just be able to say, hey, I want to help. And I know that some of you are in that situation, and I've seen some of you do that. It's amazing. It's a beautiful thing to see. But for those of us who have been in financial straits or are there now, imagine what it would be like just to say, man, I've been where you are, and I want to help you. I want to take care of you. Imagine if you got some vacation time, and the biggest issue you had was trying to decide where to go. Because money wasn't an object. Just be able to say, I want to go wherever I want. You got options. You can do whatever you want. If these practical things don't really excite you, maybe a spiritual side will. Luke 16, verse 10 tells us that if you are faithful in little things, you will be faithful in large ones. So for those of us who call ourselves followers of Christ, this isn't really a suggestion. This is a requirement for us to be faithful in the small things. This is how we can worship and serve and honor and please God. I don't know about you, but I want to be different than most people. I want something different than what most people have. I want something better than what most people have. And the reason I want that, especially in this area, is because we know that less is more, stress is bad, giving is good, and tomorrow matters. So, in keeping with that, there are 3 prayers I want us to pray. First one is, give me self-control. I think we all need to pray this on a regular basis in various areas, but particularly when it comes to finances. Proverbs 25, verse 28, again, written by Solomon, says, like a city whose walls are broken down is a person who lacks self-control. Doesn't mean a whole lot to us, but imagine you live in a day and age where you literally have to have walls around your city or you'll be under attack. How important is it to you to build those walls? It's going to be vitally important because if you don't have them, you're going to be under attack. And so he's saying you're going to lose everything. I mean, you'll be vulnerable. People can come in and take whatever they want from you. And so Solomon is saying that if you don't have self-control, it's like you've broken down your walls. It's like you're hurting yourself. You're damaging yourself here. Because you have no self-control. You are vulnerable. The problem is, we all have this 2-year-old kid inside of us, right? You've seen these kids at the grocery store. Maybe some of you have had these kids. Maybe some of you have been these kids, where you see something, usually chocolate or something like that, a toy, and you just scream, I want it, I want it, I want it. I gotta have it. It's incredibly obnoxious when a little kid does it in a grocery store. It's tragic when an adult does it. I mean, it's kind of funny, but it's also true, right? What we need to do is we need to lock that kid up. We need to discipline that kid, literally and figuratively. The one that's inside of us, we needed to say, no, I'm not going to let you ruin my life. I'm not going to let you control things simply because you've got to have it. You want it. A lot of people will get really excited about sales, right? 30% off, 40% off, 50% off. They'll go and they'll buy all this kind of stuff, and then they'll come home and say, look how much money I saved. Really? Yeah. Maybe if you needed all those things in the first place, you saved a lot of money. But if you didn't need those things, you really just spent a whole lot of money that you didn't have. A lot of times what kills us is the nickel and dime stuff, you know? Just a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here. It was on sale, it's okay, it was just a little bit of money. For some of us, you know, you just blow the wad all at one time. I bought a boat. I don't even live near water, but I bought a boat. Or, you know, we're going to Hawaii. Can't afford it, but we're going to go. We deserve it. After this winter, which is still going, it's April 15th. I mean, anyway. I can understand it, right? I've thought about it myself. You know, how much would a weekend trip to Vegas cost? Not to gamble, just to enjoy the sun. You know, just to be able to say, I'm warm for a change. But if you can't afford it, then you are blowing it. There's a part of us that feels like everyone does this. And to some degree, I think we all do. But the thing is, I want to be different. I want us to be different. And if you want extreme results, you have to have an extreme lifestyle. It has to be extremely different than everyone else. So we are going to learn to say no for a little while, so we can learn to say yes for the rest of our lives. We're going to learn to say no for a little while, so you can learn to say yes for the rest of our lives. And you might be in a position right now where you're saying, that sounds good for somebody who's young, starting out. I've already blown it. No, that's not true. I want this to be true for all of us. It doesn't matter how old you are, how far along the path you are, to what degree you think you've already blown it. Start now, no matter where you're at. Give me self-control. Start today. Pray, make that prayer. Number 2, second prayer I want us to pray is give me understanding. So many of us don't understand how this stuff works, and I'll put myself in this category. I said before, one of the reasons that I'm leaning on this Life.Church sermon is because this is an area where I don't think anyone has ever said, hey, if you got financial problems, go talk to Rob. Go talk to Pastor Rob, because he's got this thing figured out. I don't think anyone's ever said that. I'm sure it drives my wife crazy a little bit, how little I know when it comes to finances. And I know I'm making this prayer. Give me understanding, God. I'm making a commitment to learn to know more. Hosea chapter 4, verse 6 says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. I mean, that's pretty heavy, isn't it? My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And I thought, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, let's just take something simple. Let's say you've never driven a car before, you've never been out of the house before, and you decide, hey, I'm going to drive. First of all, if you have no knowledge about how to drive a car, you're going to be destroyed, and you'll destroy other people. Let's say you get to a stop sign, and you have no knowledge of what that means, or a red light. Chances are you're going to be destroyed. Let's say you come to a train crossing, and the lights are coming down, and you don't know what that means. You have no understanding what that means. You will be destroyed. So in very, very simple, practical ways, you are destroyed for lack of knowledge. This verse is particularly talking about lack of knowledge about God, that his people are destroyed, but it also makes sense for finances as well. If you don't have an understanding, you're going to destroy yourself. Lack of self-control, you destroy yourself. Lack of knowledge, you might destroy yourself, or other people will destroy you. But you will be destroyed. People are hurt financially when they don't understand. Most of us, I know myself, when I look at the cost of something, if I'm going to put it on credit or something like that, I'll be asking myself, okay, how much do I have to put down, and then how much is the monthly payment? And then I think whether I can afford it or not. That's pretty much it, right? I mean, that's what most of us think. That sounds like, hey, that's even thinking more than some people do. We need to ask ourselves, what's the real cost? How much is the real cost? I was looking up the amount of debt today, the average debt in the Canadian household, and it's tricky to figure out because there's all different kinds of reports. And so, I wasn't going to do a real deep dive on it. I'm just looking at websites, different news reports. What's the average Canadian debt? Because it's changing all the time. Unfortunately, it's almost always growing. And I saw some figures that said, it's $8,500 a person. That's not housing debt, by the way. That's like credit card debt. This is above and beyond housing. So that's $8,500 a person, up to maybe $22,000 a person. So I kind of went somewhere in the middle. I went with a household. If we say $8,500 per person, let's say $16,000 for a household. Let's say you owe $16,000 and your minimum monthly payment is $250,000 a month. Or sorry, $250 a month at 19% interest. It's going to take you 40 years to pay that off. And in the end, you will have paid $105,000 interest. So it's one thing to say, what's the cost of that? How much do I need to put down? What are the monthly costs? Let's look at the real cost. Now, I want you to imagine again. Let's say that you didn't owe that. Let's say you had that money, not the $105,000. Let's say you had the $16,000 and you invested it at 12% interest over 40 years. You'd end up with $1.5 million. Now, is that something that could interest you in? Dora, I'm not selling you anything right now. Just the idea. So instead of being a borrower and being a slave to the lender, what if you were able to invest? What if you were to take that money and make it work for you? Now, let's say that's just at 12.5. That's just 12%. Let's say you took that $250 a month that you were paying on the interest. Let's say that you started putting that into it. What would you end up with? Over 40 years, $4 million. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? That's the kind of money where you say, do you want to go to Hawaii or do you want to go to the Mediterranean? That would be something I'd be interested in. People destroy themselves if they lack self-control. So we need to pray for self-control. People are destroyed when they lack understanding. So we need to pray for understanding. And the third one is we need to pray for a plan. God, give me a plan. Because it's one thing to just have a dream. It's one thing to just say, I'm going to do it. Unless we actually have a plan, we're going to be in trouble. And that's an issue. That's a problem I've had in the past, where I just say, yes, I'm going to make that difference. But I don't make a plan on how I'm going to do it. Proverbs 21 verse 5 says, the plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. The plans of the diligent, or another translation, good planning and hard work lead to prosperity, but hasty shortcuts lead to poverty. Plans lead to profit. I mean, if we're talking about a financial sense, if you put it all down, no one's going to make a plan that's going to lead to debt, right? If you sit down at the beginning of your investment or whatever, your business in this area, you're not going to say, okay, let's make a plan so that we lose money in the end. No one's going to do that. If you make a plan and it works out, it will lead to profit. That's what we want. Haste leads to poverty. The Hebrew word for haste is, I felt sad and I went shopping. All right, that's what we mean by haste. That's what we say, it wasn't part of my plan, I just felt like, I got sick of the snow, I went to Vegas. Haste is just doing something because you feel like doing it right now, not because it makes sense. You can wander your way into debt. You can stumble your way into debt. You can mistake your way into debt. Problem is, you can never wander your way out. You can never stumble your way out. You can never mistake your way out of debt. You have to have a plan to get out of debt. So, this isn't my plan. This is one that someone else came up with. First step is to have an emergency fund. All right? Make sure you're going to be covered just in case. Second thing is to pay off debt. Third thing is to invest. And doing all of this is honoring God with a plan. I'm sure there's other ones you can come up with. This is just the one that I found that came in mind. The idea is make sure you have a plan. If you're faithful with little, God will trust us with more. So again, I want you to imagine a debt-free life. What would that free you up to do? If you didn't have debt, what would you be able to do? I mean, we talked before about being able to go on a trip or buy something nice to have some kind of great experience, but I want to take it a step further. I want to ask you, what could you do for God's kingdom? This verse, if we're faithful with little, God will trust us with much, comes from a passage of Scripture, which is a really tricky one to figure out. It's called the parable of the shrewd manager, and I'm going to read it to you. It's from Luke chapter 16. Starting in verse 1, it says, Jesus told this story to his disciples. There was a certain rich man who had a manager handling his affairs. One day a report came that the manager was wasting his employer's money. So the employer called him in and says, "What's this I hear about you? Get your report in order because you are going to be fired." Not something anybody wants to hear. The manager thought to himself, "Now what? My boss has fired me. I don't have the strength to dig ditches. I'm too proud to beg. I know how to ensure that I'll have plenty of friends who will give me a home when I'm fired." So he invited each person who owed money to his employer to come and discuss the situation. He asked the first one, "How much do I owe you?" The man replied, how much do you owe him? Sorry. The man replied, "I owe him 800 gallons of olive oil." So the manager told him, "Take the bill and quickly change it to 400 gallons. "And how much do you owe my employer?" he asked the next man. "I owe him 1,000 bushels of wheat," was the reply. "Here," the manager said, "take the bill and change it to 800 bushels. The rich man had to admire the dishonest rascal for being so shrewd. And it is true that the children of this world are more shrewd in dealing with the world around them than are the children of light. Here's the lesson. Use your worldly resources to benefit others and make friends. Then when your possessions are gone, they will welcome you to an eternal home." So, I don't know about you, I find this passage tricky. It almost seems like Jesus is saying, hey, be sneaky, cheat your employer, which is not what he's saying. He's just giving us some insight into how the world operates. He's saying it's important to be shrewd, and he's saying that the children of light, he's saying his followers, Christians, God's people, are often less shrewd than the world is. I've heard it said that it's to our shame that Coca-Cola is more widely distributed than the gospel of Jesus. But it's because the world is more shrewd than the followers of Christ. And so some lessons we can take away from this guy. First of all, he knew that he was going to be called to account. I mean, the moment came, he'd been cheating, and he found out he was going to get fired. He knew the moment was coming, and he took it seriously. Well, we're all going to be called to account for our actions. And so we need to take that seriously. We need to understand that that day is coming. Second thing he did is he took advantage of his present position to arrange for his future. So Jesus isn't saying it's good to cheat anybody. It's not good to steal from somebody. What he's saying is use what you have right now to make sure your future later makes sense. So he's using that in an eternal standpoint. We need to use our present resources to plan ahead for eternity. So each of us has been given certain things. We've been given blessings. We've been given gifts. We've been given skills. We need to use those for God's kingdom in an eternal sense. Verse 10 says, "If you are faithful in little things, you will be faithful in large ones. But if you are dishonest in little things, you'll be honest with greater responsibilities. If you are untrustworthy about worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches in heaven? And if you're not faithful with other people's things, why should you be trusted with things of your own?" What's interesting here is that money is such a big deal to us. I mean, it makes so much of our life, and we spend so much time thinking about it, worrying about it, stressing about it. And as important as it seems, and in fact sometimes is in our lives, Jesus is saying here that it's the small stuff. You've heard that term, don't sweat the small stuff. And he's saying money here is the small stuff. If you're untrustworthy about worldly wealth, who will trust you with the true riches of heaven? The true riches are eternal. And so let's make sure we put our emphasis, our focus on what's really important. But God's also saying, it's like when I was a football player, the coach would drill into us over and over and over again certain things. The one that comes to mind is you put the ball away. You catch the ball, you put it away. And you put your hand over the end, and you put the other end right there, and you put your hand on top. That way no one can steal it away from you. I don't think I ever fumbled, because I took that to heart. Every time I catch the ball, I put it away. I still do that. If I'm just playing catch, I'll catch it and just naturally put it away. Because the things you do in a practice, you do in a game. The things you do over and over when it's not important, you'll do when it is important. And Jesus is saying the same thing is true with us and our finances. The things that he's blessed us with today, you take it, you take care of it now, and that's showing that we're going to take care of what's really important down the road. Why would I trust you with the true riches of heaven if I can't trust you with worldly wealth? It is our responsibility as Christians to look after the things he's given us. Verse 13, you've probably heard this one before. No one can serve two masters, for you will hate one and love the other. You will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. So my question for us is, who are we going to serve? Who are you going to serve? So what are we going to do? We're going to say no for a little while so we can say yes for the rest of our lives. We're going to ask for self-control. We're going to ask for understanding. And we're going to ask for God to give us a plan. And a lot of that is not just, Heavenly Father, make it happen. No, it's give me the strength and energy and focus I need to come up with a plan that honors you and blesses you. We serve a very good God. It's amazing that whenever we start to do something that's right, whenever we try to pursue him, whenever we try to put him first, to seek him and work his plan, it's amazing how he honors our faith, how he blesses our faithfulness, and how fast he can bless our wisdom and our right steps, and we can see significant change take place. And that's my prayer for us. That's what I hope to see. I hope to see that those steps are being taken, and I hope to see that the blessings are coming, and that we are not living with stress in our lives, at least not financial stress. So what do we know? Say it with me. Less is more, stress is bad, giving is good, and tomorrow matters. We will be faithful to our God because he is faithful to us. He gave his son Jesus so we can live eternally. And our only reasonable response to that is to give our whole lives back to him. God's blessed us with gifts. God's blessed us with income. He's blessed us with resources. We need to understand that they don't belong to us. They belong to him. So let's honor him with it. Let's see how we can use them to honor our God. I'm going to ask the worship team to come back up, and I'm going to pray for us. Dear Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for the ways you've blessed us. We want to thank you for the gifts you've given us, for the resources you've given us. And God, for the times that we've messed that up, we confess that we haven't handled it well, but we want to do better. So Lord, we want to pray for self-control. We want to pray that you'll give us understanding, that you'll help us to figure things out the way you want us to. Pray that you'll give us a plan, that we will be able to work hard to develop a plan so that we can honor you with everything you've given us. In your name, amen.